This is an IBM System P5, an enterprise server from 2006. In a previous video, I had tried to get AIX IBM's Unix variant installed on it, but failed due to hard drive reasons. In this video, I will succeed. On top here, we've got the much smaller xSeries 336 IBM enterprise server, also made in 2006. This guy can be configured as something called an HMC, or Hardware Management Console. An HMC is used to remotely manage and administer many of these larger System P machines. An HMC can also be used to create something called logical partitions. These power machines can be divided up into many smaller machines to run independent workloads. In this video, we're going to get an OS installed on the System P5 here, and we'll also do a little bit of maintenance on it. We'll also get this guy working. It, of course, doesn't boot right now, so we'll resolve the hardware issues, figure out what's going on there, and then we'll get HMC installed on it and remotely manage this P5 with this one. Let's get into it. I'll give you a really brief theory of operation here. This is a remote management card in the P5. It's called the FSP, Flexible Service Processor. This thing has some software it's hosting that you can hit in a browser and remotely manage this machine independently. But what we're going to do is get this machine installed with HMC, get it on the network. We'll get this thing on the same network, and they'll actually be able to link up, and this thing will start controlling this thing remotely. But first, this thing doesn't boot. Let's deal with that. This is just a plain old IBM eServer xSeries 336. These came out in 2005, I think. This particular unit built in 2006. But what makes it special for our HMC purposes is the type. So this is a type 7310 CR3. And I believe the HMC software, the ISO image that you put on these, looks for certain types and will only run on those. That's my understanding. So it's hard to find information about this online, so correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what makes this special, and you're able to use it as an HMC. That was sort of its intended purpose. But it is also just a plain old server. I mean, you could use it for anything. On the front here, we have our good friend LightPath diagnostics panel, bunch of LEDs that'll show you error statuses of the machine. We're going to be using that in a second because, of course, it doesn't boot right. On the left side, just two ports. These are sort of frustrating. They just clip in like this with these clips. They're prone to like getting dented in like that, which is kind of annoying. Comes with one drive, default configuration. I suspect that's what this is in. And let's see if I can figure this out here. So the drive has this nice handle, flexible handle that lets you pull it out. 80 gig SATA drive, default config. But the handle gets stuck on these things. That's happened many times over the years. And so this one on the left is all dented up and prone to getting stuck. So kind of a frustrating design there. I'm going to swap sides. So we'll slide this back in. All in all though, reasonably easy access and able to pull the drives out without tools. I always like that. And then having a look down from the top here, kind of an interesting setup. We've got two compartments, hot swappable fans. That's all that's in there. These guys just pull up like that. They're on nice little rubber bumpers for sound deadening and less vibration. This one over here is broken, unfortunately. It just doesn't latch. eBay seller didn't tell me that. They never seem to notice that. More fans over here. This thing only has one CPU, so I think if you added a second CPU, you would add more fans. So that's the normal config. Normal, just, you know, SATA cables coming to the drives, really clean. This machine's in great shape. Nothing weird going on inside. Got some instructions on pulling those hot swappable fans. That's why they're orange. And then some FRU, field replaceable unit parts. Kind of nice. This clip is the one that's broken. There's supposed to be like a nub right here, but that's okay. And then to make our way further in, we've got this latch. The whole thing slides back. It just comes straight up. One CPU. I think that was the default config. It's an Intel Xeon something or other. I think it came with less RAM than this. These are 500 meg sticks, I believe. Yep, IBM OEM 512 meg PC2 3200 sticks. Total of 4 gigs. And then this is sort of an interesting setup. These almost look like RAM, and they're the riser cards. You undo clips that are basically identical to RAM. And for this one, you actually have to get in there, that little access hole. Kind of interesting. And then the whole thing comes up. This one has a network card on the back, which I think is giving us trouble. I'll show you that when we start this thing up. And yeah, just Little riser cards that kind of look like RAM. Nice IBM logo there. What is that, a state? East Coast state? Yeah, North Carolina maybe? I really like the attention to detail they played on this riser card. So first of all, it's nice to have all the system information in this nice decal on top of it, you know, so it's playing double duty. And also, in the design, a lot of these systems, they'll have these cards that are really long hanging off like this. If you press on them, you're going to hurt them. They've got this nice tab here, securing it here, and then down in here, there's a little plastic foot right here, so that if for some reason pressure gets applied here, you know, something pushes on the top of the case or whatever, it's not crunching into anything or hurting anything. I think that's really nice. On the back, fortunate enough to have both power supplies. They just slide down with this latch, come on out. These long ones are always kind of interesting. And I'm biased now after my last IBM experience, but this machine is very clean, I must say, which I'm really happy about. Now, system management, we'll have to dive into that, see what that's all about. Onboard NICs, 2 of them. PS2 mouse and keyboard, so that kind of shows the age of this thing a little bit. 2 USB ports, serial port, VGA port, much appreciated, thank you IBM. And then a network card I was showing you earlier. And then a slot, little half slot for another one. So in my case, it can be a little finicky to get that cover back on. I found it works better if this is up. This is what I meant. So this is just flapping around. Doesn't latch. This one does, thankfully. Pretty cool looking machine. I like how it opens up like that. I've never seen a fan go bad, you know, and I buy pretty old machines. Is that a common thing? Because every manufacturer, it seems, makes it very easy to replace fans. I suppose it's a pretty critical item if it was to go wrong. So let's see, you push it forward as much as you can, and then that latches it the rest of the way. These close right up, and then of course this one just falls over. Yeah, pretty nice looking machine. Of course it doesn't work. Let's fire it up and I'll show you what it's doing. Okay, got you pointed at the front here. This is the Light Path Diagnostics module. Bunch of LEDs that tell you all sorts of things that might be going wrong on the machine, as you'll see. It's funny that IBM calls these light path diagnostics. Light paths are physical tubes that LEDs shoot light through. The System P5 that we're hopefully going to be managing with this actually has a pretty elaborate light tube scheme going on inside, so I like that IBM kind of kept that nomenclature. I don't know, it gives it a little character. This one has a speaker, apparently. So we're going to power this guy on. I can hear the PSUs. Full disclosure, I've done this once before. And it just kind of boots itself up for some reason. Usually, you know, you need to press a power button. Of course, complaining that something's wrong. BRD stands for system board, which could be many things, but something's wrong with the system board. That's not good. Hoping it's just the clock. PS1 just means I only have one power supply plugged in. That's no big deal. So let's wait for it to post a little bit. So yeah, it's coming up, and it says rebooting due to unexpected NMI. And now we see it's complaining about memory, it's complaining about PCIe, and still BRD and PS1. So I believe what's going on is that PCI slot. Don't know what the story is with the memory. Incredibly, there's an IBM support article about this, and it involves a dual port Ethernet adapter. So it's saying, if an affected adapter is operating at PCIe 64/133 speed in shared PCI slots, with one of the 2 slots not being populated or used, you can get this, which I believe is what I have here. And the solution is the system is working as designed. That kind of makes me nervous. Why would someone have this in a configuration that isn't valid? But we're going to roll with it. Back in here, we're going to open up our fake RAM slots there. Take this whole assembly out. And then, yeah, I think this will just slide out, I hope. Oof. Here's our dual port NIC that hopefully it's complaining about. It's original though, like manufactured for IBM by Intel. Why would it suddenly be a problem? So I haven't been getting lucky on anything I've bought lately, so I have no reason to believe my luck has changed. But we'll try it. Throw the cover back on just to at least pretend I have confidence. Okay. That was its memory from before. Let's see if it cleared everything clearly. See if it starts itself up. Yep. Waiting for it to post. Probably not good. The BRD is still lit. Maybe that's the clock. Ah, yes! That was the problem. We got past that error, and it's just looking for setup. Oh my gosh. Alright, let's see what it does. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a keyboard or a mouse on it at the moment. I wasn't expecting to get this far. I think it's trying to net boot. Interesting. Let me see if I can get a keyboard on here. Wonder if it'll put up with a USB keyboard and mouse. Wasn't ready for the success. While I was dicking around with that keyboard, I think it's got an HMC on this root disk. It's going to town. Some sort of Linux installation. I guess I shouldn't assume it's an HMC, but yeah. We'll come back when it fully boots. It is running HMC software. Look at that. Wouldn't it be nice if this was our BRD LED issue? Let's find out. No. A man can dream. It must be something straightforward though, since we were able to get into the HMC software. Let's take care of some hardware upgrades for this System P5 so we can get AIX installed on it. Now, in an earlier video, I tried that, and it's got this special backplane in here for drives, and you need a special converter board. I've got 2 of these drives now, which you can see have this special board. I'll go into more detail in a minute. A bunch of viewers commented to let me know exactly what I needed to buy, so thank you if you're one of those people. Got 2 of these on eBay, so that's great. And then another problem with this machine, which isn't critical, but will be an issue someday, is one of its power supplies appears to be bad. Now, a viewer, Zev, reached out and he was willing to send me this for the cost of shipping, which was a great deal. So if you're watching, Zev, thank you. He believes it works. No guarantees, of course, but we'll get that in there and replace the bad one and see how we do. And now, as I recall, this thing only has, I don't know, 2 gigs of RAM, 4 gigs of RAM or something, definitely less than it deserves. And so while we have it open, I'm going to try to scrounge up some RAM around here and see if we can improve that as well. I haven't powered this up in a few weeks, but as I recall, this is the bad one. So let's power this up and see what it does. Mad about something. They're both complaining. Man, this case went through some damage. You can see the bend in it. All these things just get beat up after they get decommissioned. Anyway, this one's fan is not on. This one's fan is. So let's pull it. We'll do it live because that's the point. Pull this one out. Fan is never turning on. Here's my replacement. We'll hot swap them live. You know, that's what it's designed for. I don't know what any of that means. So this one still complaining. This one also complaining. I wonder if something is wrong further down. I had double checked and all their specs were the same, but it's kind of funny to see that this one has an exclamation vertically from our orientation and this one's horizontally. And look at that. No more complaints. But with the old one, I've never seen them all green. There's always some flashing yellow. Maybe if we plugged it back in. Ah, yeah. Okay. Both fans are going now, and we see this means AC input good, AC input good. The old one never did that. The middle one with the green blink is DC. Let's see what blinking means. It means control voltage good. So everything's good. I suspect that goes solid green when the machine's on. Doesn't really matter because obviously this solved my problem. The fan never turned on in the old one. Very exciting to have both these power supplies working. To my knowledge, this was the only broken part in this P5. So it's great to have that fixed. It seems like a small detail, but as these things get older, you're going to have parts wearing out, and it's really good to have redundancy. These things have tons of hours. And of course, we've already had one fail on us. So I'll keep this around in case I can repair it or ever am forced to repair it. The viewer that sent this one along, Zev, has their own P5. And they also included this. This interesting card was in their P5. It's a PCI 8R. I don't know much about it, but basically it's a massive serial breakout port. So I'll have to do some more research, find a cable for that. Yeah, let me know if you ever used one of these. Excited to try this out someday. So again, Zev, if you're watching, power supply works great. Really happy to have this machine complete and functional again. Let's see what we can do about our RAM situation. We'll get all this stuff out. In reading the documentation, there is a chance that you might have to like have the right licensing or something like that to even have RAM upgrades. That wouldn't surprise me. But hopefully I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure this is just DDR2 RAM back in here, and you can almost get to it. But unfortunately you have to take this massive fan assembly off, well at the very least. So you clip all these. This is getting harder and harder to take out, so hopefully that's the last time I do it. Alright, let's pull some of these. Pull this guy. I might not even have the RAM I need, but it's worth a shot. So this is IBM OEM 1 gig, made by Samsung. I don't see a speed on there. Yeah, that'll have to wait. I have a bunch of DDR3, I have a bunch of DDR1. I don't have any DDR2, which I believe this is. Alright, well, onto the hard drives. This thing has a proprietary backplane for its drives, and what it came with were a bunch of these blanks. Well, I should say, these are the blanks. But it came with a bunch of drive sleds without the back connector. A ton of people offered to even send me these, and at the very least were telling me what I should buy. So I picked up a couple of these on eBay. These are some OEM IBM drives, recertified apparently. I'm sure that's fine. These are a little older than this machine because they say eServer. They dropped that nomenclature shortly before they made this P5. At any rate, you can obviously see the difference. Little adapter plate. And on the back here, we've got some light tubes, of course, coming from the backplane all the way to the front. So what we'll do is slide one of these in. These are metal, by the way, super nice. My understanding is that these should work. So you're going to want to pull this clip all the way up, kind of has a detent, push it all the way, and then the clip latches onto the case and does the rest of the work. Pushes the drive into the backplane. And so there we go. We'll start with one, probably, I don't know, just one. Kind of cool. We've got our little lights hanging out here, our light tubes. We should have everything we need to install AIX. I've put the lid back on in a show of faith that that's the last look we're going to need in here to get going. Well, it's time to introduce software into our journey here. I find the hardware aspect a little more therapeutic myself. So I called up IBM and said, hey, I need to install AIX on my System P5. I need a copy. And they sent me these. Before we get going though, our friend has been moved to a position of prominence here on the top of the server rack because it makes a lot of noise. And I don't know how long this install is going to take. And it's actually no small feat to move this thing basically anywhere. It's incredibly heavy. If you do find yourself moving your System P5, I highly recommend you take off this faceplate. It is very easy to damage that while you're moving it around. Unfortunately, our good friend, the V240, has been relegated to the floor here with her buddy, the V440. They will make a comeback, I promise. But in the meantime, show you how this thing's hooked up. My absolute favorite thing I've ever bought for my home lab, especially with these old enterprise servers, is this MRV InReach serial console. I've got it mounted in the back right here. I'll show you that in a second, and it's awesome. Looking at it back here, and basically these are 8 serial ports. They happen to travel over RJ45 Ethernet cables, which is somewhat convenient half the time. Basically gives 8 serial devices access to your network, and they can telnet in. It's absolutely incredible. On the back of the P5 here, we've got a normal Ethernet connection to the FSP, the Flexible Service Processor. This is the remote management card for these units. This will let us access the ASMI, the Advanced System Management Interface. I'll show you that in a moment. We'll get reacquainted with it. but we will be kicking things off over serial. This is just the serial port to the P5. You can remotely manage it that way. It's coming into this beautiful adapter I made, which converts serial over to RJ45 that the MRV secure console understands that I was just showing you. And then of course, that's fine. That's, you know, perfect. We're just gonna cover that back up. So to summarize, remote management interface over the Ethernet with the FSP. We'll be able to see the serial output with my beautiful adapter here. Yeah, we're looking good. Look at this. This is Collab Retro Enterprises. Oh yeah. Let's install AIX. All right, I've plugged the P5 in. It's doing its little pre-boot sequence. Let's go remotely manage it over in the workshop. Here we are in the management interface of that MRV console server I was showing you, and isn't this just a treat? Peak computing, folks. So you can control the settings of all those ports. I believe the IBM wants 19,200 baud. This can be a little overwhelming. You can see all these options, but basically when it comes to serial, both ends of the line just have to agree on things. So they're both using the same speed and several other key aspects here, and pretty much all there is to it. So I'm able to control all these settings remotely, which is awesome. And then I can also connect to the console this way. Let's see if it's working. It is. This is the IBM talking back to us, asking us to log in. I actually had to throw a null modem connector on there too. I don't know if I got that on film. Serial was meant to work over modems. A null modem just crosses some wires so that two computers can connect directly. Anyway, this is nice and all, but what's really cool is I can remote into it with a terminal. That serial console exposes each of those physical ports over the network. This .53 IP address is the actual MRV console. Anyway, we can telnet in, and here's the IBM talking to us. So we can get logged in. Asks you columns and lines, and there we are. We can turn it on, go back, log out. So now I'll be able to fully remotely manage over the serial console without it actually in this room, so I don't have to listen to it. Now let's take a look at the web-based version of this, the ASMI. This web interface is hosted by that FSP card that we plugged an Ethernet cable into. Let's get in here. Basically, we can do anything here that we can on the serial console. So power, learn all sorts of system information. I love the real-time progress indicator. It's a web recreation of that green screen with the codes on the front of the machine. So over in power on off, just for fun, let's boot it up from here. I believe we want to boot to the SMS menu. That's going to let us hopefully take a look at that new hard drive. Save and power on. Got the serial console sitting here. I think what we're going to see is the boot process take over. Yeah, so here it's spitting out all its progress codes. I can't remember what these are called. Let me double check. Progress codes. They're called progress codes. In the serial console, it's reflecting what's happening on that green panel on the front. So we'll let this do its thing, and we should enter into the SMS menu. Love that IBM logo. So I'm going to say 1. So I want to check my boot options and make sure it's going to try to boot from that CD-ROM. So do 3. I think it's an IDE. There it is. So it still knows about its CD-ROM. Nothing new there. We'll set that as the first boot device. And then it tries to boot over the network. We don't want that. So let's select the second boot device. We're going to say hard drive. It's a SCSI. All right, we can't find it. I think that's okay though. So what I'm going to do is put the first AIX disk in, and then we'll boot to that on the CD. And I'm pretty sure the AIX installer is what you use to detect the disks. I love that IBM console art. I don't know what you would call it. Logo. Got a spinner down there in the corner. That's good. All right, we are getting into the AIX installer. I think we want to do change show, installation settings, disk where you want to install. Oh man, HDisk 0. I have never seen this thing detect a disk. This is so exciting. I think that's okay. Let's go back. Let's just start now with default settings. Yeah, HDisk 0. Wow. Okay. Feeling cautiously optimistic. Not enough disk space. Okay, it knows that the disk is there, but it thinks it's 0 megabytes. Progress, I guess? Needs to be formatted somehow? Well, I'm going to power it off and throw that other hard drive I've got in. It's going to be a long night. I think I have a plan. This is that other drive I have. I'll put that back where the other one was. Pulled this one out. This is the one that's showing up as 0 megabytes. It probably just needs to be formatted or low-level wiped or something so that the P5 can detect it. But here's my plan. Got it out of its cage. So you can see just a converter from regular old LVD SCSI. This is a known good drive. I'm going to put this one back in the tray. I'll put this one back where the bad drive was, and I'll put this one on the far left so that it's in a different backplane board, just in case that's a factor, and we'll see what we get. There's hope. So I believe this is that second drive I had, also showing as 0 size. Probably not actually broken, I just need to do something with it. But my known good SCSI drive, there it is sitting. Well, let's see. So now we're going to try to throw this thing on that one. All right, we are pointing at the good disk. Let's see what happens. I am once again excited. Really hope this works. This is going to take a very long time. And man, they give you all sorts of copyright information. Let's do something else while this is cranking. It's just now occurring to me that I don't need an OS on that P5 to manage it with an HMC. Don't know why I was so fixated on that, but that'll be nice to have something real on there anyway. Turn our attention over here. So this one came with a drive, and based on our research earlier, it looks like it's got some version of HMC from 2008. I'm going to leave it like that. We're going to leave this alone. And I picked up one of these adapter boards, which lets you put an SSD in there like so. And we should be able to slide that into the machine. And we'll get a fresh copy of an HMC version on here just to see what that's like and preserve this in case we need it later. I guess my word of warning for these units is if you're buying one, make sure you get one of these little plastic deals. It'd be annoying not to have that. This thing weighs like nothing. It's an IBM eServer branded drive, but man, it's just cheap, I think. Weird. That is not a typical trait of IBM. What am I looking at here? I have no idea if this is going to work, though I don't see why it wouldn't. Oh, maybe the HMC image doesn't like SSDs, who knows? It's my understanding that it's just Linux, so some sort of really locked down Linux variant. You can't really do anything with it other than have it host the HMC software. This cool little case looks like it's metal, but it's not. Now this thing is really light. I think you just slide the drive in like that. Yeah. Probably don't even need to do this, but we'll throw a couple in there anyway. If 2 won't hold it, 4 never would. Let's get our new setup in there. Good enough for me. I'm going to leave this thing off. It's stretched out these tabs get because it hooks right on this. Pretty lame design. All right, it finished all its file sets. Took a little over an hour. Still thinks it's only at 93% complete. Okay, it's still doing stuff. There's a bunch of missing file sets that sound important, like Ethernet and USB. We'll deal with that when the time comes, I guess. It's still moving. Rebooting. This is sort of the, I don't know, menu the machine hits when it boots, and you can get into the SMS menu and deal with the boot list and stuff like that. Let's take a look at the boot options. I'm just curious if it sees the hard drive now that AIX has done what it needs to do. Okay, it sees the hard disk. If you remember earlier, SMS couldn't see it. Okay, I think what just happened is we're booting into AIX. Look at this. Boot device is a hard drive, not a CD-ROM. So what's going to happen? I guess we can set a root password or something. Come back when it loads. We are booting an OS on the IBM P5. I'm so excited about this. I have been waiting for weeks to get around to this and be able to do this. Very awesome. I've never seen AIX at all or used it, so, and I'm sure most of you haven't either. So yeah, it's definitely different than Linux or anything else. Yeah, it's doing some sort of first time initialization. It says, please, it's got a typo. Please waiting several minutes for the initial setup. Stopping the LWI nonstop profile. Oxymoron, IBM. The terminal is not properly initialized. I think I want a VT100. Ooh, this is fancy. Arrow-based navigation. I am accepting all license agreements. Pretty sure I tried to accept them, but I rejected some licenses, and now it says I can't use the system. Okay. Oh man, this is terrible. I literally am going to have to Google this. Here's the story with IBM's own website linking to their old documentation. It's just not there anymore. You press tab to change this from no to yes. And then I think you press enter. I don't care about the date and time. I'm going to set a root password. I'm going to go plug this thing into my network. Ooh, cool. Root. We're logging in for the first time, folks. Oh, we are in. Yes. Okay. We have installed AIX on the P5. HMC time. But for posterity, this is what it looks like when you attach yourself to the serial console. Console login. Perfect. Love it. Okay, now HMC time. Things are getting serious. This was throwing off a lot of heat, so I've got it powered off for now. But we've got our HMC, the xSeries 336 on top here. Show you how we're going to talk to this thing. This thing has some sort of onboard management, which I've never used, so we'll have a look at that. Hopefully I can just get onto it on the network, and it's got the default user pass and figure out how to reset it. Worst case scenario, we can administer this thing over the KVM. Still complaining about BRD, but hopefully that's not an issue. We are going to be performing a scratch install of HMC on that new disk, and we're going to be using version 779. I believe that is the latest version that supports Power 5. Pretty straightforward. We're going to download the 779 ISO, get it on a DVD-R, and boot the machine with it, and it should be able to install onto the drive. Now, IBM hosts all these ISOs. They're called HMC recovery ISOs, and they all have different versions. And IBM likes to use FTP servers to host this stuff. So if you're in a modern browser and you're clicking these things, it seems like maybe the links are dead or something's going wrong because new browsers out of the box don't support FTP anymore. So all you have to do is copy the link, go to an FTP client, paste the path in there and connect. And then you can see here we can browse through all of IBM's recovery ISOs, grab the one we want, drag it over. So let's get that burnt. This thing is burning away, getting our new HMC install media ready. Got the KVM set up. One of these yellow lines is going back to that HMC machine. Dell KVM. Got it running through a capture card so that I can look at it. Let's see if it works. Just powered the machine on, got the disk in there. Let's see, I think I stole it from this guy. Will it work? Nice. Let's see if it'll just boot to that disk. Yeah, let's F12. I wonder if that 162 configuration error is what the BRD complaint is about. To look into that. All right, let's see if we can get it to boot off of the CD. While we're here, I'll show you this. I set the IP address of the remote management unit to 3.5 on my network, 192.168.1.3.5, and I can't get into it, so that could also be the BRD complaint, or I'm doing something wrong. I see nothing in here that lets me choose the CD-ROM as the first boot device, so let's reboot. Okay, we got in. I must not have hit F12 fast enough last time. We are going to go boot off the CD. All right, I think we're going to be able to get this installed, assuming it can see that disk. I did see that disk in the setup when I was diving into that last night. Okay, just took a while. We are not backing up. We are doing a fresh install. We're going to install from media over the network. We could do it. That'd be advanced mode. I was looking through the instructions and I will need that second disk, so I'm going to burn that now. I think it's expecting that second disk. It's complaining about something. Hope now it's okay to reboot. Me too. I'm going to try to get that second disk in there. Yeah, it spit that first disk out on its own after it was done, so it was just stuck waiting for the second one, I think. So let's see what happens here. This is good. Looks like an OS starting to me. Unable to mount CD-ROM. Press any key to shut down. That sucks. What went wrong? I don't want to shut down. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. I pulled both disks out, kept trying to spit them out. It says, please insert disk 1 and continue. Perfect. I'll be back. Yeah, this is where it was sitting last time, and it eventually gave up. We'll see. I think it doesn't like that the time and date is wrong on the machine. Unreal. Okay. Pursue that avenue. Yeah, the date is set to... it doesn't make any sense at all. It's either the 48th day, doesn't make sense, or the 48th month, also doesn't make sense, of 1980. So I guess that could confuse things. Ooh, I think we're getting somewhere. Here's a good one for you. I had the CMOS battery in backwards. So that, of course, was the BRD error on the front panel. That's gone now. It's just complaining about the second PSU being unplugged, which is totally acceptable. So yeah, that's why the system time was nuts, and this thing was really unhappy about that. So I'm a professional. This is what we've been looking for this entire time. Remove disk 1, reboot the machine. This is asking for the second disk. One more time. Yes, this is going just how IBM's documentation said it would. We're going to finish the installation. Finally, guided setup. So you can have the HMC connections between the machines and the console on a private network. Some power system versions and HMC versions require that. I don't think mine do. So we're going to do open network, and these things will work via my router. I hope that's the hope anyway. We're going to let it just grab an IP. We've done it. We have a functional HMC. Now the real fun begins, figuring out how to actually use this thing and get the P5 connected to it. What kind of serviceable events do we have here? Whatever. This is a version of HMC from 2014. Hopefully I got my versions right and I can hook that Power 5 up to this. That would be soul crushing if I had to do that again. All right, we definitely want to make sure this thing can be controlled from a web browser, so I don't have to use this KVM anymore. I think that's what we turn on. I think we're in. We can access it with a browser now. It's very particular about whatever... What? I just turned it on. Let's try that again. It's kind of working. Come on, baby. Yeah, I'm going to have to like change a bunch of browser settings so that it's not complaining about certificates and stuff. Oh, maybe I'll just... Okay, we're looking better now. Oh, Jesus. Now, I'm going to go learn how to use this thing. I'll save you that pain, and I'll be right back. That was really easy. All I had to do was add the IP address of the P5's FSP, Flexible Service Processor, as a managed system. Had to reset a few passwords, and that was it. This HMC now is managing that machine. Really cool. It knows it's off. It knows that it has a warning indicator on the front because one of the PSUs isn't plugged in. Connected to the service processor. Let's launch the Advanced System Management, ASM. Okay, so you can just access the ASMI right here from the HMC console. I guess that's kind of cool. I think this is the password it made me reset. Yeah, okay, well, that's not particularly interesting, but that's a pretty clever way for them to do it. So the ASMI that's hosted on the P5 itself has all these capabilities in this UI, and the HMC just, allows you to get to it easily from one spot. That makes sense. So cool. Well, let's power it on from here. See if that works. I think I can hear it in the other room. Machine is up. It knows it's running AIX or Linux. It knows it's running. And over here, a little more information about the RAM. But yeah, it says you can only have 4 gigs of RAM. I don't know if that's an actual physical hardware limitation or some sort of licensing issue. Of course, we have 2 processors. Now it's time to talk about LPARs for a second. Logical partitions. So you know I only have one P5, and the HMC is saying I have one server containing one logical partition. So that's how these System P and System I machines work. You can think of it like a VM. So you'll have one physical machine, and you can create, if you're licensed appropriately, I'm not sure that I am, what are called logical partitions or LPARs inside of the machine, and they're totally isolated and independent. The LPARs think that they are completely different machines running. And so I could have a Linux LPAR, an IBM I LPAR, and an IBM AIX LPAR all running on this one P5, theoretically. So I've got my server selected here, and I think I can go to configuration, create partition, AIX or Linux. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it. I guess we'll give it one of our processors. That's another interesting aspect. You can give LPARs partial processors, so like 0.5 of a processor. Kind of interesting. I have looked up no documentation about this, by the way. And then you can assign different physical adapters to the LPAR. Pretty fascinating. Guess we'll give it the second Ethernet port required. All right, we're not going to give it any hard drives or anything. Let's just see what happens. We will give it the second serial port. Is this just going to work? Not activated. There's actually very useful help documentation built into the HMC UI. I haven't had to go to Google yet. Wow, okay, so we've got two LPARs now. Our original AIX installation, which was apparently just a default LPAR that always exists, as far as I can tell, ID 1. Now I've got this other one that's not running. I called it LPAR 2. Probably delete it and make it with better settings. It doesn't even have a hard drive. It's got nothing going for it, no processors. I think this other LPAR is taking up all the resources. Yeah, I don't know how to turn it on. All right, the first LPAR is basically just has all the resources. So this is really interesting. I think maybe this P5 can do logical partitions, which is really exciting. I'll have to do another video on that in the future. One of the reasons to hook up an HMC is that it's a requirement for LPAR management. You can't do that without an actual HMC running. So this is really exciting. I had just assumed that my P5 didn't have the right licensing to do LPARs. That could still be true, but the HMC seems to be letting me create them, and I think it's just a matter of me not doing it right, and the other existing logical partition is taking up all the resources. So cautiously optimistic that I'll be able to get that working in the future. That would be really cool to experiment with LPARs on this thing. But for now, let's see if we can power it back down. Shutting down. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm really liking this. Things are looking good. I am really happy to have a functional physical HMC and this P5 with a real OS on it running, and both of them working together. Really happy that I was able to get both of these fully working. As you can see, they're working great. I think the P-Series and HMC and all that, the whole ecosystem is really fascinating and fun to use. I'm looking forward to getting LPARs on this thing if I can. And I never actually got the remote management board for this guy working. So, you know, there's always projects. You, of course, don't need to run a physical HMC, and the preferred method these days is in a VM hosted on some other machine. But I think it's way more fun to get this period correct HMC tied to this 2006 P5. I had a really good time setting this stuff up, and I learned a lot. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It really means a lot to me, and I have more content coming. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I'm also on Patreon, where I post behind the scenes videos and the occasional early video. But regardless, I have more projects than I know what to do with, and I'm going to film them all. So I'll see you in the next one.